start giving a brief introduction of the office, and then I think Tara's going to focus on admissions. Just to kind of briefly talk about the fact that, as many of you know, the Office of International Education has undergone a lot of changes in the last few years. And we've restructured and brought all of the units together. So just to kind of recap what comes out of the Office of International Education is we have international recruiting, international admissions, so the whole admissions process happens in our office, immigration support and student services, study abroad, education abroad for domestic students, the intensive English program, and then also many aspects of international development. All are coordinated out of our office. So physically, those units have come together in one space. So we have how many people together in one space? Quite a few, yeah. So we've done a lot of work, and we've done quite a bit of hiring and moving and different things of that nature. But we feel very confident in where we are right now, and going forward, we feel that we're going to be a very strong office. With that said, we currently have, you'll see the statistics in here, but we have probably around 425 international students this semester on campus, which is our highest number. We do have a goal of 1,000 students, to reach 1,000 students in the next 5 years. So that would be 10% of the on-campus student population, which is an ambitious goal. Statistically, if you look at the number of universities that do have 1,000 students, they are not that many. Michigan is the seventh state in terms of international student enrollment, so a lot of students do come to Michigan as a destination. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of strategic planning and putting the right people in the right positions with the right training so that we can achieve that goal, but achieve it in a smart, sustainable way. So we're looking at trying to achieve that by bringing in diverse international students, as you do not put your eggs in one basket per se, but also we are doing a campus needs analysis project that is kind of started, but it's going to get going in full force here pretty soon, where we're really taking a look at the needs and capacities of the different programs on campus, their suitability for international recruiting and admissions, and we're going to use that as a document to guide our recruiting efforts over the next few years so that we can meet some of Ferris's needs as well as recruit students that will come into sustainable programs. So those are some of the goals that we have, and so as you may have seen on campus, it might feel like, wow, there's a lot more international students, this is complicated, things are happening, and we've gone from 120 to 420 in 3 years, so it is a big jump, and so what you're seeing is there for a reason. So we're going to talk today about international admissions. Tara Braun is our international admissions coordinator. She's done a lot of work on revising our processes in that office, and then we'll move on to who was after admissions. What was it?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It'll be intensive English.
Yeah, okay, the intensive English program, I'll talk about that, and then Tony will talk about student services.
Okay, so I just wanted to share some history going back to fall of 2012, kind of what our admission numbers were, the number of students that had applied, and then the number that we admitted, as well as some percentages. This will give you an idea of kind of what we're working with in the office and some changes, as you may already see, that occurred since fall of 2012. If you compare spring of 2013 just to this past spring, you may say, where'd all the applications go? Okay, because there has been a dip. However, we have been able to weed out our applicants better, and we are seeing better applicants come through. Okay, back then, we would have literally like groups of people apply, and they really wouldn't even submit all of their documents. They'd put an application through but never complete the process. So the other thing that we're seeing is that students are actually completing this process as well. So that's why there is that change in application. But you can see that our number admitted has actually increased. I will state that on this sheet that you see right now, it does reflect the 81% number admitted in the spring. Does reflect a group of 31 South Korean students that we have on campus right now for a short-term English program for 6 weeks. So it's actually a little lower than that, but yet still way above all the other semesters that you see. Okay. I also have shown you the number of students that have arrived each semester. And again, you may look at this spring number, but you have to remember 31 of those are for the IEP program as well. Okay. So that number is increasing slowly, but I've also supplied you with the IEP admitted and the IEP number arrived. And these are the students that are here for our intensive English program. And the 113 is reflected in the 198, okay? Right now, as far as colleges go and the number of international students that apply for the colleges, College of Business and College of Technology are neck to neck right now, okay? College of Business may have beat you out this semester. Like 2. I ran the numbers.
The 2 I talked to, I'm sure.
Yeah. Any questions on the chart or any observations you would like to state?
Do the IEP students typically transition into programs?
Right. When I admit a student and I place them into IEP, it is because they have not presented the required English proficiency that they need to prove they have met. They will be almost conditionally admitted. I will make sure that they can academically go into that program after IEP, but until they have passed the IEP, they will not go into the academic program. So their admission letter actually will read, you've been admitted into the intensive English program, you're going into the pre-program after that, and then you'll transition into the regular program. I just wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the top countries that we admit students from. And I'm sure none of you will really be surprised to see the countries on this list. But Saudi, India, China, Canada, Nigeria, and South Korea are our top 6. We, of course, do have other countries represented on campus. We have about 40 represented with the students that we have right now, 40 different countries. In spring of 2014, our admitted number actually represented 20 different countries. So that's why we're trying to diversify a little bit here. Okay, I did want to go over the intake process for admissions that we go through as a student applies. It starts off just like domestic. A student inquires about the programs here, okay? And then we communicate with them. We have hired a communication person in the office to handle the inquiries that come through email and phone, and we are tracking those. The student goes from a student inquiry stage into the application stage. Our application, we have a new one coming out again to communicate better with Salesforce, and I've just been working the last couple days with regular admissions to get that new application out. Waiting period for required documents. We are not like regular admissions where students just submit a transcript and there you go. We have all other kinds of documents that I'll review with you that need to be submitted. So we do have this waiting period where the student has applied, but perhaps they have not sent their required documents in yet, okay? I can't control how long it takes that student to get me their documents, but until we have them, we're on hold with them, essentially. We get the documents and we receive our application fee, which is $30, and then the file is ready to be reviewed for academic. If need be, I will send, you all know this, I'll submit it to the colleges for review if I feel as though it needs to have an approval, and then we'll either accept or deny that student. I then have to create the immigration documents for the student as well as the admission. And then we have to obtain the shipping information for the admission packet, send out the packet, and then the student has to attend a visa appointment once they have those immigration documents. So if you kind of back this process up, most students need at least 3 months for this process. So we have backed up our application deadline by 3 months from the time that the semester starts. And this is why, because when you're shipping internationally, it can take like a couple of weeks to receive things. So, and then the student, we're hoping, confirms their visa with our office so that we can make a note that yes, they've received their visa, they probably are coming out.
If I can jump in real quick, we do have an application fee where domestic admissions doesn't, and the reason we do that is to kind of make sure that their intent on this. This is something that they want to do because students will apply internationally to many, many schools, get immigration documents from several different schools, decide through the grapevine which one they think they have a better chance of getting a visa with, go in the country on that visa, immediately transfer to another school. So there's a lot going on with that whole application process, and we're trying to get a handle on that so that we're not wasting our time processing things that the student has, zero chance, because that's a different aspect than for, it's kind of the same for domestic students, but internationally it's a little. lot going on.
So I did want to state, once we start reviewing the documents and I have reviewed the transcript is the time that I start working with transfer credit with the student, okay? And that all depends on if the school that they have attended is currently on our system or not, or if they have attended an American school. If either one of those two are in place, that system goes very, very quickly, okay? If not, and it's a school that's not on our transfer equivalency system, we then have to send all that information to Marcia Longbrake in admissions, and then she then distributes it out to the colleges for review. Realistically, that process could take up to 4 weeks, okay? So that might explain sometimes if a student is here for orientation and you don't see their transfer credit is complete, I want to point out that I'm relying on the student that is not in our system to supply us with course descriptions. And sometimes they don't, okay? Sometimes they arrive with them. And so obviously that means that we do not have enough time to get these on their permanent record before they go to registration with you, okay? We try everything that we can to get them to submit those course descriptions at that point. We even go through the transcript and mark down which ones are on our system and which ones they need to supply, so they don't have to worry about sending in the whole batch. We just want X, Y, and Z. And sometimes we just don't get them before they arrive. So we do explain to them on the application that we need that in order to get your transfer credit. We do tell them during the application process that we need that. So I'm not quite sure what else we could do to get them to get the idea that you're not going to see that at registration unless you get us that information. So I'm sure that we have a similar problem with domestic students.
So I look at this as kind of being a timeline of how things happen.
Yes.
Obviously, we're accepting students before we have all their documentation then.
No. No. What do you mean by documentation?
I'm talking about their transcripts and.
Yes,
we have an
I can
opportunity to
admit
review.
somebody based upon their GPA without having done the transfer credit process.
She has the transcript, and she knows what classes they took, and she can calculate the GPA as long as it's a school, a school that we accept. But, so they would get admission, but they're not necessarily gonna have their transfer credits in place if they are a transfer student.
Which is really true of domestic students
Right.
also.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So nobody's admitted without the transcripts, but in terms of the descriptions for what would be accepted as an equivalency, sometimes we don't have that.
On this page, I am going over the required documents that I have to have in order to admit a student, okay? One of them is the application fee. We have to have a copy of their passport for immigration purposes. We have to have the official academic transcripts. If they are applying for a graduate program, we also have to have those required documents for that graduate program. They have to have that proof of English proficiency or they will be placed into the intensive English program. And we also have an official bank statement, which is for immigration purposes as well. So this is the whole package to me, okay? I could admit without this, but they're not going to get their immigration document from me until they show this to me, okay? But that's the whole package to me. That's what I look for to classify a student as ready for review.
Tara, you can issue an I-20 without the bank statement?
No.
Okay.
She could
Okay,
say
admission.
you're admissible,
Okay.
but you're not gonna get your immigration.
This past spring, for example, I'm trying to remember, there may have been 5 to 8 students that I had admitted, but never issued an I-20 for because they never gave me their financials.
And an I-20 is simply the document that they take to immigration.
Correct. Yeah, they can't get their visa without that document from us.
And they have to show proof of funds for $27,000 to cover 1 year of expenses, tuition, living, et cetera, so. so, and that's a governmental requirement.
I'm just gonna go over a little bit of the review of what the admissions office or the admissions department does to prepare for orientation to hand the students off to Tony. We do prepare the reports, I'm sure some of you have seen them, on our expected arrivals or our students that we have admitted about a month before orientation. You also may know that I do send out reports as students are arriving to the colleges, showing you who has actually arrived, okay? Those needing to take the Compass Math, which again are identified when I'm going through the transcript, I identify if they need to take the math. If we've already done their transfer equivalencies or it's a school that's already on the system, I do make a note if they have reached Math 216 or what level of math they already have in their system. And then they don't have to take that math requirement if they meet the requirements of the program. So they are scheduled and it is documented before they arrive who needs to take those tests at orientation. Now, orientation begins generally about a week before classes start and usually lasts around 4 days. So in those 4 days, we have to get, and Tony will go over this more, but we have to get the orientation out of the way that we need to do in the office. We need to get the English test out of the way. We need to get the math test out of the way, all before they hit you on that Thursday typically to register for classes. So that is a lot to try to squeeze in and try to get the student to understand what they all need to do. The Compass test is usually given on Wednesday morning, and they come and see you on Thursday. The students are told when they arrive that they need to come and take this math test. They're not going to get classes the next day. And as you all know, some of them do not go to that math test, and that's where some of the issues come up. Placement or removal from the IEP program is determined after that English test is given, and we have the results. Okay. Now, we do have exchange partners. We have about 15 partner schools that Ferris has agreements with in which their students can come here for 1 semester up to 2 semesters. And they don't pay tuition, but they are attending classes just like they would when they're back home. Our students can also go over there and do the same. But what that means for you is that these students are coming in and they are typically a late sophomore, maybe an early junior, maybe a late junior level, okay? They're going to be coming to you and they're going to be needing that level of classes. Some things that we have done to improve this process, because I understand it can be very stressful to have these students come in. These are our partner schools. They are very much in line with our academics at Ferris. However, their programs that the students are coming over on may not be ran through the transfer credit process, okay? So we won't have the math level and we won't have the other items, but they are asked to supply an English proficiency test just like all other international students. If they don't have one, they're tested as soon as they arrive. Most of the time, a lot of our partner school students are great with English. Okay, we are noticing a small issue with South Koreans and our Japanese partner school, and some of them have even ended up in the IEP program because of it. Okay. So I have supplied to you as a handout a learning plan, and this is an example of what our exchange partner students are asked to submit with their application. It's this one right here, okay? And this is basically a list of classes that they will need to take when they are at Ferris. Now, we are asking them to submit this with their application. So it's hopeful that this will assist your colleges in getting them the classes that they have requested. Because if they wait until they get here during registration at that level that they need, sometimes they're not getting what they need to take back home with them. Do you have any questions on the exchange student process? Because it can get a little complicated because of the fact that we don't have all of those classes that they would have taken on our system. However, again, they have been recognized as a partner school of ours. They're in line academically. They are an approved school, more than approved. They're a partner school. So there shouldn't be any issue with a transition for those students going from one class to another. The only time that we run into an issue is what do you do with the prereqs? And so Sharon, I think that you have a few words to say about that.
Well, we ran into that issue in our accounting area, and also students who were, for instance, coming in for business classes, but wanted to take things out of arts and science. And they were concerned about whether or not the student was at a level where they could be successful in the class. For instance, the only thing I can remember is a student that wanted to take a class on women's studies, and the professor was very concerned about that. So you have to work out some of the political areas with the students I've worked with. I don't know if you have that problem in your program, so. I've even had people, again, in our own college that wouldn't let students into specific classes until we sat down and worked it out. Because if you have a junior, senior coming from our partners, they're supposed to be able to go on to the next level of classes that they supposedly prep for.
One thing about our partner school students as well, you have to remember, it's their responsibility to work with their partner school as to how those classes are gonna go back for them, not ours. Okay, it's our job to get them into the classes that they have on their list and what they say they need to take back to their school.
And our
I know that
dean
that's been a
actually went
concern.
over, I can't remember which school now, I apologize, went and sat down with their dean and, okay, this could take this class here, this will work out here. I'm sure you guys do that all the time because you have a little bit more experience than we
And
do, but.
We have slowly started getting more detailed with particular programs, and I know that I've worked with College of Technology often on trying to get a lot of those particular programs articulated with certain schools. And the more that we look for partner schools, the more that we are beginning to do that. We are dealing with a majority of our partner schools that we have right now are older agreements, and that process was just never done. So this process of going through and making sure that things are on the books is very new.
And it seemed to work so well once this past year, I guess.
Yeah,
So
it's
new,
working better.
it's new.
It has a lot of improvements to go through, but just like anything, it takes a while to make a change because a semester is semester, and you have to wait for the next semester to make another change. This learning plan did start off this past spring, but it got started too late. Okay, it came through, but I think it caused maybe some additional stress more than it helped because we didn't really discuss this plan until October-ish. And then it went out and the students, I had to kind of get after them to get it in. So it's gonna be a learning process for our partner schools as well that we're now asking for this. But partner students right now are starting to apply. So for fall. So if we get this early enough, the hope is that we can work through all of this and get them the classes that they possibly have on that list.
So with the transfer credits not coming in, like as an advisor, I would not be able to see where that student was at their previous institution. But then they have to identify classes that they want to take at Ferris based on what they see we offer, where they think they need to be.
That's the exchange program.
Right,
Yeah,
That's
this
not
learning
transfer.
plan is not for every international student, just for our partner school, our exchange students.
Okay.
Those are the ones that you are correct, we would not have done the whole credit transfer process. They're only here basically for a semester.
Okay.
So
So
they're
the
doing
other students
basically a
don't-
study abroad. They're doing a study abroad, and they're gonna go home. While they're here, they wanna take a class that will help them toward their graduation at home. So their advisor helps them select something that they should be ready for. And, at this point, the programs have to say, all right, we're gonna kinda go on good faith since they're our partner, that this student can handle that. But, each college has to kinda determine how they wanna deal with that. But, running through the entire transfer equivalency, when this is really basically the same as our students going abroad for a
Okay.
semester and taking
So
a
if I
course.
have a student that says, Miss Ducat, I'm gonna get 6 cultural enrichment credits when I go study abroad, am I gonna be able to put it towards my degree? I say yes. That's what we're doing.
Exactly.
For
And-
international students on campus?
No, she's saying for
For
abroad.
study abroad. If I
Okay,
have a
yeah,
student-
that's what I thought you were asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sheet is only for international students coming to campus.
But it's those international students, like, if, we have a partner school in Germany. So our
they're
students
going
go to
back.
Germany, yeah, but here, the German students are coming here for one semester, they were taking these classes, hoping to transfer them back. It's up to their institution to determine whether they transfer.
Okay.
The thing here is we wanna make sure that they're successful in the class, or that they're not creating a lot of stress for the instructor or the other students in the class. I mean, that, I think is the,
I think study abroad is almost another workshop.
yes.
So it's,
Yeah, that's why
I'll
we
do that
didn't throw
one.
it in here. We discussed it, but that's its own thing. You could spend at least an hour talking about that.
but one thing that you brought up that does concern our college, and but with domestic students too, is that you get them, you're trying to place them, and the transcript hasn't been evaluated.
But what I do in that, if a student comes to me and says, hey, I took Chem 110, you know, whatever, wherever, and I'll just work around it and say, well, until we get those transcripts, I'm not gonna make you take something you've already taken, we'll
Right.
just take the next section,
Right.
or as long as it's not
That's
clear.
pretty much
That's,
what we
that's
do.
exactly, I mean, some of the things that I suggest you do with these students is take a look at the transcript that's on the system for them. And just see what kind of, and ask them questions, you know, did you go over this, did you go over this? Because if you're looking at a math class, this is what you need to have already done. And you're right, we are totally relying on that student, but I think if you've worked with students long enough, you're gonna get a feel for it. I think they don't understand what I'm saying here, I don't think I should put them in that class, right? And you can do that.
And we've done that, and, you know, we have actually, we have another advisor in the office that helps Tony with advising, and she's very good with the exchange students saying, you can't do this, you need to study English, and she drags them out.
And
all that.
we've done that with international students that have arrived and have passed, supplied the English proficiency test with a passing score. We get them here and we're like, no. They are not understanding what we're saying right now. One thing that I did want to go over with you as well, back on the document screen, I had mentioned official academic transcript. We do ask for that to be in English. Okay, so you will maybe see the transcript if you were to look on the system in their foreign language, and then a translated version as well. Sometimes students can pay a lot of money to have this translated. There are certain companies that they can go to that will actually do their transfer credit evaluation as well. And one of these companies is WES. They pay around $200 to $400 to have their transcript done through this system that we don't accept. We'll accept it as an English version, as an English translation, but we won't accept their credit evaluation. And that can confuse students sometimes. But as we're working with them on the transfer process, another thing that can confuse the students is I always have to get out of them. Now, when you see the transfer credits show up on your MyFSU, those are the credits that are coming into Ferris. It may not be the credits that get transferred into your program. So that's another question that you may get from me. Sometimes students that are on a sponsorship or a scholarship may need to know how many credits are transferring into the program, how many credits they have left, and their date of graduation, expected date of graduation. So in order to do that, I have to do their transfer credit process, wait for it to hit the system, and then I will bug you guys and say, will you please take a look at this student and let me know X, Y, and Z, because I need to prepare a letter. So just so you know, we do ask for that in English. Now, the bank statement is something that I can take as long as I can get the gist of what it's saying and who's the account holder. I can always just do that through a currency converter myself.
Tara, one quick question about the exchange students. They come with this filled out as to what classes they want to take?
They will submit that with their application materials, yes.
Hopefully they're sending it well before they come.
Right.
And then you would take a look at that and determine if you have questions about, you know, like you would know a class that is fairly basic, you know, they can probably do well, but if it's a higher level class, you would kind of have to think, I'm not so sure about this, and you might want to wait till you meet them, you know, and talk to them and say.
We are beginning the process, like I said, with the partner schools starting to send in the applications. Our application deadline for fall is June 15th. However, I have proposed that we back that up a month for our partner schools because of this, so that we can get this taken care of. Generally, they're way above that deadline now.
But, you know, in this situation, if you have it early enough, you can actually communicate with the student or even the faculty member because they're a partner school, and you can just kind of negotiate and figure out whether this would be an appropriate class, or, you know, depending on how many seats you have available and how many kids you have. You know, sometimes it can't happen, but, you know, this is what they would desire to take. And
We've done ours strictly on the basis of personal interviews when they get here.
yeah.
Sit
That's
down,
the
talk
best.
to them, ask them questions, really technical questions so we can understand what level they really understand. And then put them in a course based on
Yeah.
that, kind of no matter what the transcript says.
Right.
you know, Because we can pretty much identify their level of competence in the various technical areas.
And that's, I think, with the exchange program, it's just determining how comfortable you are with them going into certain classes, but not requiring that they go through that official
Right.
transfer credit evaluation in order to determine prerequisites.
Mhm.
You know, and then there are certain courses that, you know, that might pop out as, you know, this is a hairy course, I'm not comfortable with that, and you could just communicate, this is not one we can accommodate.
But I think what I'm understanding all of a sudden, I'm not sure I even know all our partners. And when you say a partner with Ferris State University, that doesn't mean, for instance, the College of Business has gone through an evaluation or equivalency.
Sometimes it does. Most of the time with our older schools, like I said though,
Yeah,
they have not been done. Our newer partner schools,
The
we're
new ones
doing
have.
that. Right, and so now they're getting on the book. So hopefully as you work with students, you'll be able to pull that up on the transfer equivalency list, that you'll see that school there then, okay? Like Rhinewall with
Right.
College of Business, that's on the books now, okay? But your other schools, perhaps like ESC Trois or Saxion, those schools were not done in that process.
which I think they're trying to do right now.
It's one of my goals is to back the system
Yeah.
up.
And through our international development, what we do is we identify partners that are really cohesive with us, or that even add value. You know, we have a few partners in Korea, and we say, okay, that's the Ferris of Korea, that's the Michigan State of Korea, that's the U of M of Korea, you know, and we just kind of, you know, figure those things out. And so, you know, if you get to know students from those schools, you can kind of understand what level of ability they're coming in with. And, you know, we identify schools that have maybe some similar programming so that there's more, because what we want with our partners is, it's easy to get the students coming in by and large, it's harder to get our students going out. And so we're trying to identify partners where our students will be able to go out into an English-speaking course, a course that will transfer back for their graduation.
So some of you may get really sick of me in the future because I may be asking for some of your time to back up and kind of go through the older schools, or continue to work with some of the new ones, or continue to look at some new programs that we have as we work through the transfer credit process with these schools. Any questions for me? Not right now? I'll let you stew on that.
After Tara does all of her admissions process, I do get to take them over at that point. And I just want to quickly highlight some of my goals when we do get them here for orientation, so you understand what all we're trying to pack into the 4 days that we do have them. But also to kind of think about the students. Most of the international students have traveled to go get their visa, pay for a visa. They're paying 100% tuition to Ferris at a higher rate. And that most of them don't have financial aid opportunities or scholarship opportunities. So they're going through a lot to pretty much come to Ferris. So then when they come here to the United States, we want to try to make the process, transition as easily as we can, but also pack everything that they need to know into 4 days. So our first goal is to help them arrive to the Big Rapids campus or other campuses possibly. Like I said, many of them have traveled a lot extensively to get here, so we don't want to make them have to try to find Big Rapids from the Grand Rapids airport. So we do provide an airport shuttle service for all of the international students arriving. And this last spring semester, we actually had to go to Chicago, Detroit area because they were stuck in the weather. So we really tried to accommodate with that because a lot of them come with the limited English skills and, really need some support once they arrive. We also have to meet our immigration requirements that are given to us in order to have the international students on campus. So they do have to check in, I have to review all of their documents, and then we do have to provide a session where I go over all of their responsibilities as international students, and they all really love that session because it's very technical, but and they're after a long trip, but it's important. But we also try to give them ways to refer back to that in the future. And then we also have to complete a lot of the business office requirements, get their IDs. They do have to pay their tuition at that point right away when they get here. So a lot of them are traveling with, large sums of money or needing to set up bank accounts, right away, that sort of thing. And then we also go over housing, of course. We do try to give an overview of off-campus and on-campus, just because contracts in general for international students is very different, so that's something that we go over with them. If you sign your name on there, you're stuck pretty much in whatever you're doing for housing. And then we provide shuttles for them for moving in, shopping, buying sheets, pillows, all of that, just to try to get their basic needs met before we get into the academic part. We also try to show them a little bit about my FSU. We try to make sure that they all get logged in, because a lot of them haven't logged in yet by the time that they arrive. And then know at least where courses are, where their housing information is, and find their transfer credits if they were done. And then we also, of course, want them to understand the campus and know where to find you guys as well as other helpful resources on campus. So we do a couple fun activities with that, and so sometimes your departments might be involved in in the activities that we do, as well as we have presenters, usually from the different offices, come so the students actually get a face to connect with. Do you want to add?
Yeah, one thing is, we start about 4 days before the semester starts. We can't do it any sooner for a couple of reasons. Is one, they're limited on when they can enter the country, but we're already putting them in the Quality Inn for 1 or 2 days, and they're paying for hotel rooms because housing isn't open. And so we don't want to bring them in a whole lot sooner because we're adding expenses. And so we shuttle them from the Quality Inn to campus for those days of orientation until housing opens. And so those first few days are pretty overwhelming for them, and especially like the business office stuff. And all that is, a lot of that is very, very new to them, and the contract situation. And so culturally, they come from a very different way of doing things like this, and so it's a pretty shocking few days for them. So they're kind of zombies by Thursday and Friday.
By the time you have to take their test.
Would you say the majority of them live in the dorms or
Well,
apartments?
depending on, obviously we have about 170 Saudi students, and they have a pretty good network. They're required to, obviously if they're young, but they learn very quickly that the dorms are quite expensive, and so, the Saudi students in general who have a network go off campus pretty quickly. The students that don't have a network tend to choose on campus just because it's easier, they're on campus. So it just depends on, whether access and proximity are the key for them, or whether it's financial. They're quite turned off by Bond Hall when they come in there. That we tend to put them in Bond Hall because that's open year round. And if you imagine going to China and know that you're gonna live in this little room for the next year, you can't go home on weekends, you can't do things like that. It's a little bit overwhelming.
Is that something the university is investigating or trying to work with?
Well, Brian Marquardt is working with, he's been very accommodating, working with us on several things. Obviously they have that first year residency requirement, and I think being on campus is more beneficial for them. It's just this adjustment of, obviously everybody has roommate issues, but sometimes you throw in a different culture and they get even more amplified. So, but by and large, I think we have quite a few in Bond Hall who like it. They create a community there and they do pretty well. It's just that whole first week of looking at this and where do I, it's a little bit
It's an
overwhelming.
adjustment.
I guess I asked that because I have seen our competition and what kind of facilities they have for international students. And you do have to compete with that, don't
Right.
you? Yeah.
And we do, on our Facebook page as well, a lot of the students are starting to connect earlier to say I'm subleasing, or so hopefully that will help them in the future.
So one issue you might see as advisors is you have students with housing contract holds. Some of them come in and don't understand the rule of being under 19, and they go sign an off-campus lease before they even get to orientation. Some of them know that's the rule, but they sign the lease in hopes that that's gonna get them out of it. And so they kind of sometimes start digging in their heels with the housing office, and they know, they learn very quickly that their signature is binding and they can't get out of it, so I'm not signing a contract, I'm not, well, you're not getting classes, I don't care, I'm not signing a contract. You know, so even into this week, I think we've dealt with 2 or 3 students this week who were not registered for IEP because they were, you know, arguing with, the housing office about the residency requirements.
And then lastly, we do try to provide some sort of cultural adjustment information for them, so, you know, arriving in the snow like this, even from what to wear while you're here to, you know, just feelings that they might experience while they're adjusting to life in Big Rapids. Through this, we do try to have some sort of activity in the community. We may do ice skating here over at Wink, or the gate, the bowling, or something. If it's warmer out, we may even go to the beach, you know, just to kind of get them excited about being in Michigan. As well as we do the transportation to all of the other activities, like I said, the shopping, and we try to get them involved in bulldog beginning type things as well. Then we also have to do the tests, like Tara said, the MSWEL Compass test that week. So Lisa and the intensive English instructors are kind of running around quickly because they have to do the test and then figure out who passed, who didn't, schedule all the students at that point for their levels. So it's kind of a quick rush the last few days. And then of course we tried to get all of the students to attend your college meetings and get registered for class. So once they've been with us a couple days, they do then come to you guys. So we're trying not to duplicate information, but hopefully they get, you know, the information that they need from your colleges. And then lastly, we try to provide some networking opportunities for the students so that they get to know each other and have kind of a cohort on campus, as well as, you know, other American students and faculty, staff, community members. So if you guys are open to having lunch or something with the students one day, we usually do the rock lunches, or like I said, the gate, you know, those type of activities. We would love to have participation from the colleges because it just gives them another face to get familiar with. Any questions about orientation at this time?
Are you still gonna have them participate in the domestic orientation?
Yes, I mean, we still have to do pretty much all the business aspects of
Okay.
it. At this point, they're coming in and pretty much going just to the welcome presentation and the college meetings at that point.
So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the intensive English program. You know, some of you may be quite familiar with it, others less. These are just some of the statistics for our growth. As you know, it was closed in 2005, and so for 5 years we didn't have an intensive English program. They reopened it in the fall of 2010 with 13 students, and we've grown pretty rapidly since then. In fall of 2012, we had 104 students. We had a couple cohorts come in from TVTC, Technical College in Saudi Arabia. So that kind of accounts for those larger numbers there. But as you can see, we do have a fair number of students in this program, and these students are conditionally admitted to the university. Some intensive English programs let anybody come in to take English for any reason. We're not really doing that. We're bringing them in as a pipeline to go into the academic programs. The only distinction would be this semester we have some Korean students from our partner school who are here at short term. But some of those students are actually expressing interest in transferring here, and that was kind of the hope with the short-term program. It's their winter break, so they have 8 weeks in between semesters, and so they're coming for the 6-week experience. So, as part of our plan to grow to 1,000 students, we expect, 200 to 300 of those to be intensive English program students and to kind of keep students in that pipeline. So our program has four levels, basic levels, and then we have our bridge level. So we have a beginning level for true beginners. These sometimes don't even know the alphabet. We don't have very many students in this level. The reason it was developed is because with the Saudi Arabian scholarship program, there are students coming at a beginning level. If students are paying out of their pocket, they're not going to show up here with zero English. They're going to learn as much as they can at home and come here for the higher ends. But because the Saudi government is funding this, they're saying, hey, I'll go at a beginning level. So that's why I termed the second level, level 1, because I foresee when the Saudi scholarship program ends, that level will probably go away. So typically students come in at a high beginning to low intermediate level at the lowest. Then we have intermediate, high intermediate to low advanced. And then at the high end of our program, we have the bridge level, which is a combination of academic and so in our program, we have 4 different courses. We have a listening and speaking course, a grammar course, a reading course, and a writing course. Part of their curriculum is also called My Place, My Program for Language and Culture Exchange, which of the 4 courses, those are 4 contact hours a week. So they get 16 hours of classroom instruction, and then the My Place program is an additional 4 hours of conversation groups that they're working with domestic students. And they work in teams. They have 3 projects to complete throughout the semester. So this is a way to get them interacting with native speakers, hopefully create maybe a mentoring type relationship to help ease their transition into the university. The domestic students who participate in this have the opportunity to apply for study abroad scholarships through this up to $2,400. So seems to be working pretty well because they get interested in other cultures and they get the bug to study abroad, and then this provides them some funding. Okay, so for placement and progressions, when students arrive, they take the MSWELT placement test during orientation. Now just to kind of review on admissions, when a student applies, they can send us an official test score that establishes whether they have met our English proficiency standards or not. If they haven't met our standards, or if they don't supply anything, they have to take this placement test when they arrive. And as I said, we're usually doing this on Thursday morning. It's a 2.5 to 3 hour test, an essay, and the rest are multiple choice. Our faculty spend the afternoon rating the essays. Each essay is rated by 3 different faculty members. And then we spend Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday filtering through all that to determine who passed, who didn't, and how many should go into the different levels and skill areas. So our teachers really don't know their teaching schedule until maybe in 3 days into the semester. Things can fluctuate and change depending on where our students place. So based on the results, they're placed in one of the levels. During the first week of coursework, the instructors conduct additional diagnostics to confirm. If somebody had a lot of jet lag or something and they really didn't test well, we do some additional testing to flush that out so that we know that their placement is accurate. And then once they're placed in a level, they start there and they move to classes in the next level by passing a course with a 73% or better. Our classes are credit, no credit. So that is how they move through the program. Beyond that, when they take the test, it's not to progress to the levels, it's to exit the program. Okay, so to exit the program, they have to demonstrate admission standards that a fresh student would have coming in. So these are the test scores that we accept. The MSWELT is a test we're using in-house. Michigan State University developed it. I've worked with them for 7-8 years before I even was at Ferris using this test, and it's a good placement tool. We accept the IELTS, the IELTS test. The TOEFL IBT is the internet-based TOEFL. The TOEFL ITP is a paper-based TOEFL. We also use the MELAB. So they have to demonstrate on one of those tests. And once a score is achieved, students are eligible for unconditional admission if, of course, they meet all the other criteria, math, those types of things. And they're eligible at this time for English 150. If the students have gone to the high end of our program but have not quite reached proficiency, we have the academic bridge level where we have one bridge course, which is I guess like a capstone course of English, one academic course, and then 2 courses from level 3 that I select or the other coordinators select based on their deficiencies. Most commonly, it's reading and writing, because this is where the students tend to have most problems.
Can I add something, Lisa? When a student passes the MSWELT at this bridge, before they get to the bridge level, they will have passed the MSWELT, which is the in-house test that Lisa gives through the IEP program. You will find that information if you're starting to work with these students under the testing information on the internet banner, the self-serve. Yes. And then also you should be able to read the notes on a student, because every time that I admit a student into IEP, I put a note that will show up on their record saying they've been placed into IEP to transition into this particular program after they have passed. So that's where you can find that information as you're working with a student.
So in order to enter the Bridge program, students can do this by successfully completing all level 3 courses, but they have not passed the test yet. So they've finished level 3, they've done well, but they just still haven't reached that test, so we let them go into the Bridge. If students have completed all of their level 2 courses, but they're testing quite high, in the very top little bit, but not quite out, they can be eligible for the Bridge. So those are the score ranges we look for testing into the Bridge. But just because they're eligible for Bridge does not mean they automatically go into it. We approve, we work with advisors to say whether the student should go into it or not. So students have to show a positive track record of attendance and progress and different things like that to be eligible for the Bridge. Okay, so when students pass tests, scores are placed in SOA test. Some may be in comments, as MSWELT was only recently added. So we just got a home on the test score area for MSWELT. Before that, we were using the comment section. So for the next couple semesters, you might see it in both places. We also determined, or through feedback, that the transition process is not always very smooth. The students sometimes pass the test, and before they pick up the test score from the front desk and run to you. I passed, and and I haven't even had a chance to talk to them, different things like that. So we have developed a transition form, which I think you received a copy of. And so what we do is we complete the transition form. Tara signs off on it, and I sign off on it. It shows the English test score, the program that they're planning to transition to, whether they do at this point have a compass test requirement. And then the students should be bringing this form to you as an advisor to say, this is where they're at. And then as an advisor, you would confirm that, yeah, everything's looking good, we can do program change paperwork. So we're not conducting program change paperwork, Tara's not changing programs, the colleges are doing that once they verify that everything we believe is okay is actually okay. Okay? Any questions about IEP?
Sometimes students will get a little overexcited and they may come to you with a letter from me before you even see anything on their record, and it's probably because they immediately took that letter and went right to your office. And so we may not have had a chance to catch up with the excitement of the student.
And just an aside on that, we have many students sponsored by the Saudi Arabian Cultural Mission, and they need a lot of documentation for their scholarship. So Tara will do an unconditional letter of admission when they pass the program. That's for SACM's purposes. It's not, again, she's not admitting them, she's not doing a program change. All that letter does is state that they're done with English and they're ready to go into that program. But SACM wants it worded a specific way with this type of thing, so she produces those letters for that purpose. So sometimes those students that brought those letters say, Tara admitted me to this program. Advisors are like, Tara, you're not supposed to be doing that. She has not done any program changes. This is just for them because they have 2 levels of scholarship, an English scholarship of 18 months, and then they have 5 years of academic, and so they need to make the switch in SACM. So she helps provide the documentation for that as well.
Sidebar to that, we shouldn't be communicating with an embassy either, should we? I mean, that should be,
Well, okay.
I was asked to verify some classes. and
Yes,
all that.
let me explain this, and we just visited Sacram the day before yesterday.
And can you, is that an acronym?
Yeah,
Okay, thank
Saudi
you.
Arabian Cultural Mission.
Okay, thank you.
SACRM. So they administer a scholarship for the Saudi government, the Ministry of Higher Education. They currently have 90,000 students in the United States that they are funding. They have 500 employees in Virginia at the SACRM headquarters, and we visited there. So those students each have an advisor. If they're in the English program, it's a different advisor. If they're in academics, it switches to a different advisor. Those advisors have a caseload of about 350 to 450 students that they're advising, okay? And so as part of this, they have to collect documentation from the students, and they make the students submit everything through an electronic portal, so that they know that they're eligible to continue to have their tuition covered, but they also get a stipend of $1,800 a month to cover living expenses. So the students have to demonstrate that they're attending, that they're making progress, that they're doing all of these things. So SACRM is an interesting animal to deal with as an institution. 20% of their advisors are Sudanese, 80% are Saudi, and the advisors to different degrees are more or less responsive. It's really a matter of dumb luck which advisor you get. So we try to work with the advisors, we try to visit them at least once a year to kind of make sure the lines of communication are open, but the communication lines are very muddled with them. It's very complicated, and so the students are trying to get one thing from us. They change their rules for documentation frequently because there's a lot of, when you're doling out that much money, there's a lot of people taking advantage of it, students as well as schools. So they have a lot of false documentation, they have a lot of students who are messing around, and so depending on what thing comes through the pipeline this week, then they start requiring different documents. So there are situations where they might be asking you as an academic advisor for some sort of letter. We do provide letters that we can provide, but when they're really asking how long do I have to graduate, those types of things, we're not comfortable making those calls because we don't, once they're out of our purview, we don't have any say on that. That's you guys. So that is something to consider as an advisor because you may get requests for that. If you do get requests for that and you're not sure, you can call our office and say, hey, I'm getting this request. We know what kind of wording these students need. Usually, again, we don't always keep up on it as it changes frequently, but there may be situations where you are asked to provide some documentation. But we have 170 students. They're paying. We're close to $2 million to Ferris. Every year, and so we do what we can to keep the lines of communication open, but it is a complicated.
And when you compare that $2 million to how much you really have to write off, it's not very much, it's.
Right, yeah, I think that the one point, that $2 million is just Saudi Arabia. We
Wow,
figured
okay.
international students are bringing in about $7 million to the institution between tuition and housing. They're writing off about $30,000 in bad, which I think the rate for all the campus is about 5%. Rate for international students is under 1%, so.
I'm curious, if you raise your number, that your goal that you're looking at 1,000, what would that number look like?
The 7 million was when we had under like 350, so, yeah, that would be
Tuition's what,
Okay.
580?
$20 million. I mean, depending
Sorry,
on
I'm
how
totally
many are
switched
sitting
up stock,
on.
come on.
How many are sitting on?
Give me some numbers.
Well, Tony's got a little bit of data about the economic impact of international
I was just curious,
students,
sorry.
but they are spending a significant amount of money. And the Saudi government, even though they can be very complicated to deal with, they're funding a lot of students, and so it's kind of. So we try to keep up with them, we try to visit them, and actually there is a Ferris alum, she just graduated last year. She's originally from Sudan but spent most of her high school years in Grand Rapids. She now works for SACRM as an advisor, and so took her to dinner. So I have your direct line.
Your cell phone, your home number.
These are just quickly the numbers that we talked about earlier. So as you can see, we are slowly going up to our goal. But I just wanted to kind of talk about, because you guys are actually very important to me as an international student advisor and trying to help students maintain their student status. There's a lot of actual requirements that I need from academic advisors a lot of times. And students, I do hold them responsible for, bringing you the forms that they need and, following up on their immigration requirements. But any help, like I said, I give that all to them during orientation, so a lot of times it's kind of in and out, so it definitely helps if you guys have an understanding of some of their requirements. One was the tests that we talked about, the English and math tests that are required. We've already gone through that. But all this information is also listed on my handout that we gave you guys, the requiring, so if you guys do need to go back to it at some point later on. They also do need to attend schools that we have been approved to have international students through SCVP, which is the governing body of international students. And that is Big Rapids, the main campus, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Traverse City, and Dowagiac. So if a student did want to take a class at another off-campus site that's not listed there, they're not supposed to be doing that. Okay. Dual enrollment, so students are allowed, international students are allowed to take classes at Ferris State University as well as maybe Lansing Community College or Grand Rapids Community College at the same time. Okay, it is allowed, but they do have to have some paperwork filled out, and the courses do have to transfer back for their degree here at Ferris.
And Tony, you're approving that, correct?
Correct. So if they do choose to do this, the students have to submit paperwork with an academic advisor's signature, as well as they do have to provide the transcripts at the end of the semester to prove that they took that course and passed and then transfer the credits into Ferris. This also helps if they do want those credits to maintain their full-time requirements. So as I was talking about, they do have a minimum number of credits that they have to take. I'm sure many of you that are here are familiar with this. So for the undergraduates, it's 12 credits, and for graduates, it's 9. They do have to be courses that they receive credit for, so they can't audit classes and have it count towards full-time. And then online courses is another. Ferris has a lot of those, of course, so we do have to be very careful about how many courses that we give international students for online. They are only allowed 3 credits of online courses to count toward their full-time enrollment. So say they have 9 credits of face-to-face, they can take any amount above that online if they desire. A little caveat to that is the Saudi Cultural Mission students. They are not allowed to take online courses at all unless it's pre-approved by their advisor at SACM. So you may get, those type of requests from the students trying to prove that that's the only way to take the course, so then they will approve it if that's the only way. Mixed delivery courses, I would say please just contact us if you have questions about mixed delivery. For example, if a class only meets once per semester and the rest of it's online, that may be a little bit more questionable. It probably should be considered online for immigration requirements. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what about summer semester? What level or number of credits do they need for summer?
I had that in my notes to mention that. So if a student is admitted into the summer, so they are admitted and arrive in the summer, they have to have that minimum 12 credits. Okay. But if they've been here for fall or spring or fall and spring, then they can pretty much do whatever they want. They don't have to take classes, they can go home, they can stay here, they can take online courses, they can take 3, they can take a full load. It's their choice. But if they are admitted to summer, they do have to have that full time.
Okay. I have one more quick question. Sure. I was asked to write a letter about, for a student, Saudi student, wants to go home for the summer and take online courses. Mm-hmm. Good thing to do, bad thing to do?
Well, here's the issue with the online courses. I mean, the purpose of the Saudi scholarship is for them to obviously come here and get degrees, but really interact culturally. That's really their goal, is they're kind of trying to make some massive transformations in their society through getting thousands of students educated in other countries. So that's their limitation on the online coursework. So at that point, what the students are running into is, if it's online, sometimes SACM usually makes them pay for it out of pocket, which some can. They claim they can't, but many can. But the issue comes in is the Ministry of Higher Education has to approve or accept their degree, honor their degree. So if they're looking and they have too many online courses in their course of study, they will not recognize their degree when they go home.
And they are verifying those with our registrar's
So you
office.
just don't wanna set them up for failure, essentially.
And you know, if they're asking for documentation, you provide it, and then their advisor will say yes or no. And they'll determine whether their degree will be recognized. And same thing with program changes. The students get approved in Saudi Arabia for a certain course of study. It's quite complicated to change their major. And if a student changes their major on their own without really going through SACM, they won't recognize their degree. So those are things that, you know, we try to work with the students on, but, you know, we have a lot of students who've been approved for engineering, and they get here and they cannot do the math. And then to go into a technology program, a lot of times SACM says, no, you were approved, because they're saying we need engineers, a certain number of engineers, so this is our selection pool. We need a certain number in engineering technology, this is our selection pool, certain number in health professions. So they're doing quotas based on what they think they need in skills in their country. And so it's the Ministry of Higher Education that's putting these limitations on changes, as well as online versus face-to-face, just because they have a different goal than just getting the degree.
We had one student that wanted to do a dual degree after he got here.
Yeah,
And
that's
he
nice.
signed up for one course to do the dual degree, and the mission wanted to completely cancel his entire scholarship.
Exactly. And so those are things that the students need to really be in communication. And, you know, and sometimes there are things that, you know, you wouldn't think that, why, you know, he's getting 2 degrees, why not? You know, what a cool thing to do. But, you know, they have their reasons for their decision-making, and the students just have to stay within that, because you know, we have one student in particular, I think she's done 4 program changes, and really, she's in a program right now that they're not gonna recognize, and she's trying to, I'm like, you can go and waste all this time and go back with basically no degree, it's your choice, so.
And we'll have just as many international students that change, though they're not scholarship students, they're
Yeah,
Right,
just,
definitely.
yeah, and they can change programs, but if they change a program, Tony needs
it has
to
to go
know,
through immigration
because she
too.
has to report what
Yeah.
program they're in to the government.
It can help them, because, you know, for the work authorizations, which I'll go over, but if they're in one of the STEM fields, they could get longer work authorization in the United States. So if their I-20, their immigration document says business, but they actually graduated with a mechanical engineering technology, they actually could have worked longer on a mechanical engineering technology versus the business degree. So it's to their advantage a lot of times.
And these are the kinds of things you go over with them on the second day, which of course we know where that goes when you don't want it, because it's hard to remember all this. Isn't it?
We
Well,
do-
they're still sleeping in the hotel, like I had a terrible breakfast, yeah.
We do have a Blackboard course that all international students are enrolled into. It's on Ferris Connect, so you can refer them back to that as well, if they, you know, if they do have questions, or if I'm not around that day. You could tell them, you know, check your Ferris Connect course for
And I
that
think that
information.
those are things that you as advisors could be added to that course too, if you wanna just kinda see what.
Yeah,
Very
so we
true.
can
If
add
you-
that.
I'd have to add you, but I can
Okay.
do that if you guys are interested.
Can I ask too, is there ever any mention of disabilities or anything like that?
What, do you mean, do they self-disclose, or the?
I guess anything like that, and because I am completely unfamiliar, that's why I apologize if that's complete. You know, I understand that mental health is really frowned upon, stigmatized, but I guess I'm just curious,
Well, I think with some of like the,
accommodation wise,
some of the things they've been doing in orientation with other units on campus, I'm not gonna say it's happened every semester, but it has
Okay.
happened.
Okay,
It does come up a lot with intensive English program students. We do have students who aren't progressing. I mean, I can't diagnose, but it's clear that there's
Sure.
probably some dyslexia or something going on. And so we've tried to refer students. I've worked with Deb Cox and different people to try and refer students for testing or for help or for diagnosis, but it is very difficult to get some of them to go down that road.
okay, because even, you talked about the cultural adjustment, I mean, that, under the DSM-4, that would be an adjustment disorder, so I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
They
But-
don't want anything, they don't believe that their records are private.
Yeah, I've worked with.
They don't
yeah.
believe that, you know, the FERPA thing, they don't believe that that's really true.
Yeah, or I
And
think
so I
families-
had one student in particular, he said, I'll never get a wife. I'll never get a wife if any of that's on record. I'll only
Aw.
pump gas, I'll never get a wife. And, you know, and you know, you can say till you're blue in the face that this is
Sure,
private. He said,
sure.
nope, he said, it's gonna end up on my train, it's gonna go to SACM, everybody's gonna know, and, you know, they just, not everybody, but a lot of them don't.
Well, I think there's a lot of issues. I've had males come in, you know, you're a female,
Yeah.
nothing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff, but I was just curious, so thank you.
Quickly to touch back, the students may go under the 12 credits for certain exceptions. And I do, why I bring that up is I do again require an approval even from you guys to say, yes, you know, this is a valid reason that the student is going under the 12 credits because they may be graduating or, you know, you might feel like the courses, they were placed too high and they should have been lower. So that's another reason that they might be able to go below. But they are allowed to work, so you may get some students asking you about this, but they can work on campus for 20 hours a week. But off campus, so a lot of the engineering technology departments require internships. If it is off campus, they do have to be approved by myself. And it usually requires a job offer letter, so they do have to get, you know, offered a job, and then they can bring the paperwork with your signature to me, and I can approve it or disapprove it. I don't know, not approve it at that point, but most of the time it's, you know, pretty valid. But and there is options after they graduate as well. But a lot of those just, you know, send them my way if you get some questions, because it does take, you know, up to 90 days sometimes for processing for those. And then cultural adjustment, kind of like Maria was saying, just keep in the back of your brains that if they are missing class a lot, or you're not seeing them perform as well, or, you know, depression and those sort of things, it could be part of the adjustment period, and not to ignore it, but possibly, you know, try to get them to get some help or come see us, or even if it's, you know, they're experiencing some difficulties with certain faculty or staff, you know, just please communicate with our office, because we've had some, you know, you don't know what you're gonna get. These are ones that I do need to know about from the colleges, so if you do academically dismiss a student, that is something that I do need to know about, because they are technically supposed to be terminated in their student status. Reduced course loads, the mixed delivery, like I said, if you have questions about those things. Graduation, we would love to know about graduation. You know, I'm sure everybody here would love to know who's graduating, but that can be a little bit difficult at times. Yeah, some other ones we've mentioned. Just an idea of what you may contact me for, or our office.
Will
Sharon?
we have access to your
Tony's gonna send it to me and I'm gonna put
That's
it on
right,
the
okay.
advising. Yep, so once I gather names, I can give you the URL where it's posted.
And like I said, if you or other advisors you know are interested, that you can be added to that Blackboard Shelf for international students, and they're doing learning modules for different things that are pertinent to their life here, and that can be just another avenue for you to get the information that they have received.
Yeah, Tony, if you could put me on that too. You guys are fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.